content that you can use specifically, and first and foremost, your vendors and farmers. That's the best place to get content. In our market application, I have our vendors put in either their website URL or their Facebook handle or both. And that way, as soon as I approve them, I go over to their Facebook page, I like it as the farmer's market, and I've now curated a news feed when I go to my page that just gives me content every day to use, assuming they're posting. I send out a few vendor emails every year to make sure that they are actively posting. Well, you never share my posts. Well, what did you post since February? So I can't share anything if I don't have it. And I try to have a fairly good rule of when I make those posts, like the collage ones earlier, I feature a few different vendors. I'm not usually singling out one unless it's a direct share from their social media page. Other people you can share from are community partners, again, business connections, sponsors. Again, if you need to hit that limit or that minimum quantity, that's a great place to add into your content calendar. And then also from friends, fans, and followers. A lot of people get really into tagging or using a hashtag, perhaps that you create, or just using your brand name. So ours is Snohomish Farmers Market. I'll head over to Instagram or even Facebook and type in that hashtag and see where people have tagged us. And there's some really great pictures in there. And it's my assumption that if somebody tags us, that we are able to use their photo legally. I don't know if that's correct, but we've never run into a problem. And generally speaking, most people like having their photos featured. It ends up creating actually a bigger engagement chain because somebody sees their kid as part of Pop Club back in the pre-COVID era, and their kid's enjoying like this big juicy piece of watermelon or something like that. And then they tag their friends, oh, look, so-and-so's in the background. Oh my gosh, they had such a great time. And it keeps this conversation going. And it's really a lot of fun to watch. So like I said, liking as your page is really great for creating kind of a content feed for you to pick from. And that is just those 3 little dots at the top of any page to Alaska Farmers Market Association. Like as your page, and it'll bring up a list, and you select your farmer's market and you're good to go. And then these are just some examples of what we have shared. Sharing from our farm, obviously after a big snow, both of these were right around the same time. We have this historic stump. We say like, meet me at the stump at the farmer's market. And it was a fun picture. And it's also, we took it from the historic downtown Snohomish page. And I believe we're probably missing a tag in there with the, Green Snohomish or the Snohomish Tree Foundation, but it's still, you can see that it was going really, it got a lot of reach. I call this the superfecta post, and I do it quite often this time of year because we can't have the Easter parade, and it's the 2nd year, and we were the reigning champs that year. So I guess we get to be reigning champs for another year, which is kind of awesome. But we did a parade, a float in the Easter parade, and the networking group that I'm in, Snohomish Networking Women, volunteered to help decorate it. So we're calling out a bunch of different groups here. We're getting a lot of plug and play about, all of these ladies are local business owners. So they of course took it and shared it on their pages too. And also sharing love for small businesses opening back up. You can see this is in February. This Looking Glass Coffee is our fellow coffee shop that's right on the corner of where our market ends. And they're always very kind to us and let us use their bathrooms if our honey buckets are getting really gross. So we just wanted to give them some love as they open back up. They have gone through open and shut and open and shut and to-go orders.
Are you feeling better yet?
Yeah. And then these are some of those pictures I was talking about from our fans. So, these are great pictures, and I didn't have to go out in my booth to go take them or ask people to photograph their food. And then Jenny Cookies, she's actually a pretty big influencer in this area. So it was cool to see her tag us and be able to use that photo. So responding and conversing, because that was super fun last year for all of us, right? My main thing is don't ghost your fans. Don't ghost the people that have asked questions. even though I completely agree that it's inappropriate to ask a ton of inappropriate questions in the comment threads and expect an answer anytime soon. I've downloaded something called Pages Manager on my phone, which helps you manage your Facebook pages. Right now, it's sitting at about 575 notifications because of all the pages that I run. But when I get something from my farmers markets, I definitely respond to those because it's usually, what time do you open today? When does the market start? All of those types of things. So do the best you can. And also, sometimes I throw on a post that just says, hey, it's market day. If you need something, generally it's probably on our website or included in the Facebook post in general. That's another thing about creating content, going back a little bit. Put all the details you can into the post as, you know, as best you can. I know you don't want to have a ton of text in there, but anymore, people, it's like, just look at the post I included in there. And then you don't have to do all the extra work. And I I do get a little bit snarky sometimes when somebody was like, what's the date? When does it open? And so I said, as in the post, it opens on May 6th. And sometimes they're funny about it and they say, oh gosh, I didn't read. I'll do that. I'll do better from now. And other times it's, you know, you get the Karen that's, well, I didn't see that and you should make it more clear. So, but at least I didn't ghost her. So thank the people that are engaging them, especially the ones that are tagging you or writing reviews or those types of things. Have a short conversation if you have time. I definitely have time in the off season to do that, not so much during, but if it makes sense, I will take the time to do it, especially if we're hyping up a vendor or if a vendor has a really great story and somebody starts sharing their story in the comments, again, whether or not it's appropriate, but making them feel seen and heard can go a long way for customer loyalty. I will say, don't let bad reviews go. They suck. I know they suck, and we got our fair share of them for being sheep or being super spreaders or all of that last year. And I became very transparent in my responses last year. And I truly believe, after 8 years of doing this on social media specifically, that you show your character whenever you respond and they show theirs. And anybody that's going back through and reading those can see who's got better character based on your response. So I'm really transparent. And in some cases, you know, I was accused of discriminating against handicapped folks just because of where we had to have our market last year. And I really tried to drive home that that was not our intention. And it was an oversight, but we didn't have a choice in having to move, and we didn't have a location to go to that was handicap accessible. And I would do whatever it took personally to make them feel welcome or shop for them if that's what they needed. And that, you know, kind of simmered down that angry conversation. But we still had some negative reviews because of it. And again, I went through every single one of those and I didn't copy paste that response. I just reworded it a few different ways so they didn't feel like they were just being given the blanket response that you would get from Amazon or something like that. I do have canned template responses down here, but that is for something different. That is for automatic responses for people that send messages to your page, and I'll touch on that in just a minute. One of the key things when you do engage, especially if you have multiple accounts or if you're often doing things on your personal account, make sure that this little button here is who you're supposed to be engaging as. I've mistakenly done it as myself a few times, but most everybody knows I'm the market manager. But this is just a quick tip. And then again, don't miss the questions that probably were in the previous post, but that's okay. And then this is what I was talking about, conversing. They'll be in Australia. Well, that sounds kind of amazing. I wish I was there too. And it didn't take me much time to respond. And then some other information in the responses there. Anytime somebody leaves us a good review, I make sure I at least click that little love button. If they actually bring me to tears, which some of them did last year, I go in there and and I'm very transparent again of how much it means to us and how much it helps us raise above and go beyond some of those negativity comments and posts. And then this is kind of back when I had more time and I didn't run 3 markets. You know, keep the conversation going for 3 days. Well, that's fantastic, Sarah. But when it's July and you don't have any time to even sleep, it's fine. it's just fine. This I had time for and I did it. And she was touched. And I believe she even came by the market to just say, no, that was really, you know, thank you. It's nice. This is the canned response template I was talking about. This is absolutely okay because it's not visible to everybody. I definitely had to do this and I used it as a time saver for when we opened up our applications. All the details were in the post, all the details were on the website, but naturally we would get messages 100 a day. How do I be a vendor? It's right there. So I'll usually do something like this, or I'll include the link to our website. And that kind of ends it right there. They don't know that it was canned template response. And you can set up some parameters and play around with it and see exactly what it'll look like with this little template here. This is directly from Facebook. So it shows you kind of what it'll look like. And you can edit it, turn it on and off. You can add different questions now. What are your hours? Those types of things. And it'll give them the standard response if their question involves any of that type of verbiage. If things go super south, as they could, you are more than welcome to hide comments. We definitely had some last year that I was just like, not going to engage, not going to deal with this, hide. I can't be professional in my response, hide. And it hides it. You can hide it to them. You can block them from the page if they get out of hand. I don't recommend doing this often, but sometimes it is just necessary. So quick touch base on advertising. I don't use it a ton. I really believe that if you create engaging posts, you'll get the people that are interested in your market and they will share it themselves. Every once in a while, we go through a little bit of a slump. We have a 5-month season. So sometimes we do, or when the fair picks up in normal times, we will see a little bit of a slump in attendance. So I'll throw an ad out there. I'll spend 20 or 30 bucks just as a reminder and just to reach more of our actual followers. Don't pay for every post. Pay for the good ones. Pay for the ones that are really driving a point home. Never pay for page likes. It is an absolute Facebook scam. Pay to promote your own content. Unless you have an agreement with sponsors or a partner, they can pay for their own Facebook ads. You don't need to do that. You have a small budget for your farm or your market. So pay to promote your favorite posts. Some of those that I did earlier, that I showed earlier, are some of my favorite posts. And that's what I would pay money towards getting in front of more people, especially if it's got a link to our website, which kind of drives traffic, or an action item, those types of things. Obviously, pick the content that's helpful to your audience. And then Facebook ads get a little bit finicky on how much text you can have in the image and in the post in general. So make sure you're kind of doing more image heavy versus text heavy on your paid posts. Otherwise, it'll get rejected and you might kind of run into a time crunch there. I generally will pay for my ads. Our market's on a Thursday, so I might draw one up on a Tuesday, submit it, it gets reviewed and approved on Wednesday, and then I've got that 24 hours lead up to our market. But again, it's super up to you. You can also do longer ad campaigns that are a lot more generic, just about your market. Boosting and paying for ads well, they're all paid, but boosting is different than an ad campaign. So boosting a post is what I just talked about. I need some extra love this Thursday at my market. So I'm going to throw that post up about the ice cream and all the fresh stuff we're going to have because it's going to be 95 degrees and it's going to be hot. I'm going to put 20 bucks behind it and it's super quick and easy. You just hit the little boost post button. Facebook will walk you through the steps. It will take your money. Generally, I don't think you're actually charged until the ad has finished, but it'll go into review. It'll let you know as soon as it's ready to go, and then it will be running for the small time frame that you've set up. Promoting a post is essentially an ad campaign. It's a much more complex platform, but Facebook still does walk you through that. it's more inclusive and more involved, but it still is kind of taking you step by step. And nothing is set in stone until you submit that ad. So if you see something and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I made a spelling error, you can change it, you can preview things. It is a little scary and intimidating, and it's why I don't use them very often, but I have definitely run campaigns for some of my social media clients where it's like a blueberry farm and they want a 3-month ad and they have $700 for their entire ad budget. And we plug it in and we use some really great images, and it'll cycle through the images. You can go back in and see which images are doing well and getting more response, and you can edit that during the campaign. So like I said, it's much more involved, and it kind of requires a little bit of monitoring. Free ideas, yay, free is best. We recently, well, for the last year, we've had a Facebook private group for vendors. And I find that this is a really great area for our vendors to collaborate on their own without having to send me 100 emails. A lot of times another vendor can ask a question, or we have a lot of new vendors this year, so they can ask questions, and either our board members who are vendors or other vendors can chime in. We have to require vendor insurance this year for the first time. And so that was a whole kerfuffle conversation in there. But I didn't have to answer much of it because other vendors piped in and helped. It's also a great way for me as the manager to say, hey, the poster's done. It's going live in 10 minutes. Here's the post I created. Feel free to take my text and share it on your page. I just did the work for the vendors. Now they're going to take it and share it, and they're going to reach all of their audiences. It's really a great tool, and it's private. You have to, allow vendors in, or you can have a public group, but I wouldn't recommend that because you'll get all sorts of people in there. Community groups are the public version of that. So in Snohomish, we have a group called the Snohomies, and if I ever want reality TV, I just go to that group and I just scroll and I eat my popcorn and I watch the comments and the arguments. But generally a farmer's market post is a very well received thing, and it makes everybody happy, and we get all the fun heart emojis and the supportive comments. But you want to talk about roundabouts, helicopters, or hot air balloons, that is a place to go to find absolute controversy. But it's a great way to kind of gauge the feeling of your community if your community has one. You'd be surprised because a lot of them do. I think Nextdoor is another one of those kind of new platforms that's up and coming, that's often a place you can share content. Business to business organizations like chambers of commerce, networking groups, those types of things. If you're a member, you often get to post in there. And some of those kind of mom groups that, you've got a lot of stay-at-home moms that have kids. If you've got a kids program, or you want to encourage some recipes or things like that for healthy eating, those are great places to post as well. But it helps build fans. It helps kind of just put you in front of more people. That Snohomies group has, I believe we're at 30,000, and that's huge. I mean, we have 15,000 that like our page. So I get 15,000 additional people that might see that post. So I'm definitely going to use it. I don't abuse it. And you definitely want to read through the terms and conditions, because a lot of them have admins. And so it might take a day or two for your post to get approved. So just be cautious of that. So assessing the progress. I probably should have touched on this at the very beginning, but I do try to post on my pages for farmers markets specifically, at least Monday through Friday. I have all weekday markets, so that's what makes sense. If something pops up, like we have a holiday market, obviously I do a little bit more surrounding that, but my general rule of thumb, and what I assure all of my clients for my social media business, is 5 to 7 times a week. And that seems like a lot, but what we really could be doing is 3 to 5 times a day. That's a lot. So once a day, especially with scheduling tools, makes it reasonable, bite off chunks, especially if you sit down with your content calendar and you plug it all in. You can go into the Facebook Business Manager and schedule, or Creator Studio, I think it's called, and schedule out posts, and then just be done with it. I schedule my posts for market day because I'm just too chaotic that morning to even think about it. But that's kind of my general rule of thumb, and it has worked for the last 8 years. So I'll just put that out there. Encourage interaction, you know, in your post, ask for action items, ask questions. What are you most excited about this farmers market season? For matching programs, how are you going to spend your matching dollars? You know, definitely don't leave out those people that are your low income shoppers, because oftentimes they're the ones that support your farmers the most. Verbal mentions, again, don't forget to you know, thank people for shout outs and that kind of stuff, and for reviews. You know, Facebook versus website. I don't really do a whole lot on our website. It's kind of a landing page, but I direct people there, especially vendors or people that just need to know the basics. But really our Facebook page is kind of where those active conversations are happening. And really keep your eye on the prize. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So you don't have to be perfect from day one. You're going to make mistakes. There's going to be back slips. There's going to be days where your post, you think you have this fantastic post and you're so excited and it gets like 6 likes and you're like, wow, guess what? You can reuse that in like 2 or 3 weeks. Totally fine. And it'll probably get a lot more. You also have to be aware of what's happening that day. Like the posts that I did on January 6th in that morning, and I was all excited because it's the new year and, you know, we're getting ready. And then everything happened at the Capitol. And the only thing that people cared about that day was what was going on at the Capitol. I mean, my day stopped. I don't know about yours, but it just stopped completely. So, you know, it is what it is. And something tragic can happen. That is something that you kind of want to be aware of. If something tragic does happen, and you've made a post, maybe for after that happens, unbeknownst to you, you can quickly take it down, or switch it out with something like, you know, our hearts go out to such and such for the shooting that happened there. Make sure it's tasteful, or just don't say anything at all. It's sometimes often just better. But taking down the, we're having a buy one, get one free on blah, 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 you know, right after another mass shooting happens or something even amazing happens, you don't want to kind of be playing against that. And you might as well save your content for another day. So, conclusion: engage, enlighten, encourage, and just be yourself and be human, and explain to your people, your customers, the people on the other side of that screen, that you are human and that you're doing the best that you can. I often remind people I am a one-girl show and I have a board of directors, but they are busy. So when you come at me, you're literally coming at me. And hi, here I am. I often post pictures, you know, every once in a while I'll do a picture like, still human, hi, still here. I'm still that crazy girl that wears fruit and veggie dresses at the farmer's market with all the tattoos on our arms. So, you know, just remember who you're talking to. I have a family. I have dealt with a pandemic. I'm trying to get vaccinated, like all that kind of stuff. So it's a community effort and everyone's an asset. Some of them can be asses, but everybody's an asset in their own way. And thank you. And I am happy to answer questions. And I can read through the thread too. There's a lot of chatting.
Thank you, Sarah. Always awesome.
Thanks. This is a good one. Any thoughts on not being the only point person for social media or one's farm and having others who work for you? You've been super resistant. I was too. It took a lot for me to hire an employee that I trusted. And unfortunately, that employee and I are no longer even friends, unfortunately. But I think that just really dialing in what you expect from them and having some protocols. I kind of have, you know, client profiles that I give to my employee to look at once we've kind of decided that that's going to be it, because there's some confidential information in there. But I really go over kind of this type of a presentation with them, and do they understand that? Does it make sense to them? So feel free to use something like this to help them understand what they're taking on. Just reading. I've seen a couple comments in here about Instagram. So fun fact, and fairly new, when you use the Facebook Business Suite, which is really, I believe all pages are kind of converted to that. When you go to create a post or publish a post, you can now do it in Facebook, so kind of live, or you can do it in Business Suite. And that allows you to schedule out posts, which we talked about. But because Facebook and Instagram are co-owned, it allows you to also schedule. So there's a little checkbox in the upper left-hand corner that says post to Instagram too. And so long as your sizing is correct and you don't use too much text, which it's a lot of text, so it's pretty hard to overdo it, it will let you do both. Instagram doesn't allow you to do links, so you may have to edit, but the cool thing is in that scheduler app or the scheduler page, you can actually look at what it looks like in Facebook and see what it looks like in Instagram and just remove the link from the Instagram one and boom, you've hit 2 birds, 1 stone, good to go. Any other questions? I'm trying to scroll quickly. There was actually one brought up in the last presentation, but about how to make somebody leave that refuses to wear a mask. That's an interesting one, and I don't have the answer to that because we also suffered from that. But I had an instance at my holiday market where we had our group, our regular group of anti-maskers show up, and they had previously shown up with guns, but they did not this time, thankfully. And I immediately met them at the entrance because it was an ordeal. We had rolled back a phase, and so even to have this event was a big deal, and I was being super cautious. We had masks for everybody if they didn't have them. I stopped them and I said, I need you to wear a mask. Well, we're medically exempt. And I said, you know, I have seen you at every single market that you've tried to do this. And I have my health inspector here right now, and you are at liberty of shutting us down right now. Well, we're medically exempt. And it got very confrontational very quickly. I ended up just waving them on. I went and told my health inspector. She refused to do anything. I called the police. They refused to do anything. And so I got on Facebook and I just made a post. I was emotional, but I took a minute before I typed it out. And I said, as an FYI to anybody that feels high risk, I would avoid the farmer's market right now. We have a group here that is refusing to wear masks and refusing to leave. And they are simply loitering in the market area to intimidate. The police were called. The health district is here. Just, we want you to be aware. Come later this afternoon or don't come. We understand and respect your decision, but we've done everything in our power to make them try to abide by the rules that we have to abide by, regardless of our opinions. So the post definitely got some engagement. We had some negative, but mostly positive of thanks for the heads up, I'll come later. And it was as simple as that. So I just kind of wanted to touch on that because it was very frustrating and my blood was boiling and I kind of wanted to use some of my kickboxing techniques, but I didn't. So sometimes that's what transparency is. Sometimes it is just stating the obvious and taking the bad with the good. I had somebody say, why would you call the police and waste their time? I'm like, because that's their job. I mean, it really is. And unfortunately, we have a legislation right now that isn't enforcing that rule, or helping anybody, but it is what it is. And at least people knew, and it wasn't something that shocked them when they walked in. Another question, thoughts on using Hootsuite or managing software? I don't, simply because Facebook has really updated their tools to be something like that. And they tend to like things that they do because they know it, they have kind of some oversight on it. Facebook will definitely reduce your views if you use a third-party app that they don't own. I don't know if Hootsuite's owned by them now. I mean, they're kind of taking over everything, so I'm not sure, but definitely because of the scheduling tool that they've added, I think that they're really cracking down on posts that are created with third-party apps. Another helpful tip, I know a lot of people still use email, which is great. That's definitely what we still do if I have time or I get a volunteer to do it. And that's another way of kind of some oversight to answer a question earlier. Maybe you have, a helper do your email campaign and you just kind of plug it into a Word document, but some of the social media graphics that you've been using can easily be adapted to an email campaign. You can do that right in Canva. You can take a design that you have for Instagram and simply click copy and resize, and it'll let you format it to something else. So that's a great way to keep your brand consistent throughout the different marketing platforms that you might be using. And it's a great way to kind of delegate some of that work because you've already done the work of the graphics. Now you're just plugging it into the different platforms. They are probably trending again. I don't have time. Email subscriptions and things like that, I just don't have time. That is a place that we could use some help. And maybe that is a volunteer. We had a volunteer last year help with our email campaigns, and then she was like, wow, this is some work. I'm like, yeah, and then she quit. So when I have time, I'll do it. But right now I do Facebook the best, and that's the easiest thing for me to schedule. And we didn't really see an uptick in any email subscriptions, but again, it kind of ended midsummer last year. So how do you get more eyes on your posts? You can definitely share them into your personal feed and, ask your friends for some help. Can you help us get the word out? We usually do that with our poster, with our big announcements. Like I said, the community groups definitely get more eyes on the post. And once people see that post, you can actually go in and invite them to like the page, and that can help just increase your overall following. But try not to be too spammy to your friends, because otherwise you'll get unfollowed too. Well, thank you everybody for listening to me ramble on about social media for an hour, especially at the end of your day. I really appreciate Robbie and everybody putting this together again and letting me be your speaker on social media sanity.
Thank you, Sarah. That was awesome.
Yes, thank you so much, Sarah. Real quick, I'm back with our last set of door prizes. Woo, last two for the day. And I see Amy has her video on. You don't need to worry if you don't have one.
Okay.
Woo. I don't know if you're doing the Drink Beer Safe Farms hats, but our first prize is an Alaska Farmland Trust hat. So it's okay if you can't find it, Amy.
I'm sitting on it.
There you go. So there's the beautiful hat that Amy will mail to you. So let me share my screen.
And if a person would rather have a Drink Beer Safe Farms hat, I currently have the red hat with the white embroidery. I call it the MAGA version. It was a mistake, but if you're into that and you win it, I would happily send you a red and white Drink Beer Safe Farms hat or the green and white Farmland Trust.
There you go. And I see Brad has his on too. So here we go. Not really dressed to match, but it's all good. All right, so let's see who wins Alaska Farmland Trust hat. Elaine, congratulations, Elaine. Write you down here. All right, and then our last prize for the day is our second Twisted Root Southeast food package. So this includes, and I didn't say this earlier in the day for our first one, but includes smoked salmon from Petersburg, blueberry lime spruce tip jam from Wrangell, and seaweed flakes from Juneau. So let's see who wins. Last prize of the day. Tiffany Davidson, congratulations. I will reach out to you guys to get your information. And without further ado, I'm gonna pass this off to Amy.
All right. Well, Sarah, that was an incredible presentation. I was frantically taking notes, as I think everyone was. So much good content and ideas, and it feels like it's constantly changing and trying to keep up with how you make your posts effective and things. So I really appreciated that presentation. Our next presenter is Ben, and Ben has forgotten more about farmers markets than I will ever know. One of the beautiful things about being part of the Alaska Farmers Market Association is that you're automatically part of the Farmers Market Coalition, and you get this nationwide resource. And much like Robbie and Megan have mentioned, we try and reinvent, or we don't. We try not to reinvent the wheel as much as possible. We use existing resources, and that's what the Farmers Market Coalition brings to the table. And secondly, the Farm Bill is where all the funding comes from. And so if you're not paying attention to what happens in the Farm Bill, you should be. And Ben's going to help tell us why. So Ben, it's great to see you again. I wish you were up here in Alaska with us, and I look forward to watching you cook. And take it away.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, likewise. It'd be fun to be up in Alaska with you all. So welcome to my kitchen. That's the most fun part about this, is to have you all virtually in my kitchen. Sorry about the lighting. I know it's not ideal. So let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. This is going to be pretty interesting. I've never tried to present about the Farm Bill and cook dinner at the same time. So hopefully you all are interested in, you're welcome to join me while welcome to cook dinner with me. Let me start sharing this presentation here. All right. Great. So y'all see that? Yeah, good. So the Farm Bill is obviously, as Amy said, a huge part of where food and ag policy in this country comes from. So my plan for this one, I see some other folks in their kitchen. All right. So my plan for this one is I'll do a little background. We'll get started on making food, and then we'll go into more of a discussion about some of the stuff. But I do have some background to get into. So first, let's get dinner started. For those of you who are cooking along, so this meal is one. This is Sloppy Joe's, and I gotta say, my exposure to Sloppy Joe's when I was a kid was like the cafeteria at school, and like I can't really describe them as any other way other than like gross. They were sickly sweet, and I wasn't into them. But in recent years, I sort of rediscovered them, and I think they're pretty awesome. They're easy, super flexible. You can use like pretty much whatever ground meat you want. We've got some vegetarians in our household, some vegetarians and some meat eaters in our household. So it's pretty easy to split the difference and do a veggie version and a meat version. So I'm actually going to be doing that. You can, I got ground beef from my local farmers market it's got a little bit of, they put a little, this one's a 90 ground beef, 10% beef liver, which is a great way to get some of that organ meat. It's pretty healthy. But you can do it. I know the Alaska folks like your game, whatever, moose or whatever you guys are working with up there, deer, anything pretty much works. So I should have gotten the stove on while I was yapping. So I'm gonna do that now. We'll get the stove going, put some oil in the pan, and while that's heating up, I'm gonna just go ahead and mention that Farmers Market Coalition, we've got a lot of great resources related to advocacy. I think the word of, at least my word of the day today is resources. I think I said it at least 24 times in the legal toolkit presentation. I'll probably say it a bunch more here. Actually less so once I get off this slide, but if you go to farmersmarketcoalition.org/advocacy, we've got a whole series of videos there about meeting with elected officials, about farmers markets, video series presented by a board member of ours, Gary Madison, who has a ton of experience with policy advocacy. We've got a template for op-eds and talking points, as well as info on all the various federal programs. So that's probably warm enough. So I went ahead and diced my veggies up. So this is probably the most prepared for dinner I've ever been at the start. I pretty much always am like shopping, stuff's flying. So go ahead and dump those in, and let those cook a little bit while I get started talking about the Farm Bill. So first, let's talk about what is the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill has been likened to a Swiss Army knife, which is a somewhat apt comparison because it does a whole bunch of different things for U.S. food and agricultural policy. It goes even beyond that to jobs and infrastructure. But the other way in which it's like a Swiss Army knife is it's often not the best tool for the job. Like it's kind of a blunt instrument sometimes. So things that are included in the Farm Bill, SNAP EBT, that is the single largest piece of dollar amount in the Farm Bill is SNAP EBT. It also includes the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program, as well as the Gus Schumacher Nutrition Incentive Program, which used to be known as the Food Insecurity Nutrition Incentive Program. That's for those of you who are familiar with basically the doubling programs. That's what that is. And then it includes the Local Agricultural Marketing Program, which is now where the Farmers Market and Local Food Promotion Program grants are housed. Part of what happened in the last Farm Bill is those were all consolidated along with a Regional Food System Partnership and a Value Added Producer Grant into one program to get what's known as baseline funding. I'm not going to get too into baseline funding because it's wonky and kind of challenging to get into like the specifics of it, but needless to say, it basically means that the programs have a greater level of security, and the expectation is that they are presumed to continue both into the next Farm Bill, and if for some reason the Farm Bill doesn't get done on time, those programs keep going. It's notable that the WIC program is not included in the Farm Bill. That is in a different program. So it sounds like the veggies are cooking good. Give it a little stir. Yeah, looking good. Give them another minute, but so far so good. So I'm gonna, whoops, we skipped a slide. So the process of passing the Farm Bill, the Farm Bill is what's known as an omnibus piece of legislation, which means it includes a lot of different things. That's kind of all those different things in the Swiss Army knife. But it's important to know that hearings begin well in advance. I had a conversation recently with someone on the Senate side, and they're expecting that hearings will start happening as soon as the end of this year, with either the third or fourth quarter of this year. There's also listening sessions. Members of Congress travel around the country and listen to folks and get input on the Farm Bill that way. Those are often, they're long and kind of grueling, but very worth attending if they have any in your neck of the woods. And then there's also a process by which marker bills are introduced, and marker bills are bills that are introduced without really an expectation that they'll be debated or voted on individually. And they're basically designed to carve out a position for a member of Congress and or influence the final legislation. And sometimes they're included either in part or in whole in the final legislation. And then the House and then the Senate will each pass their own version. There will be a conference committee where they're basically brought together. And it's also worth noting that the current Farm Bill expires September 30th, 2023. We can talk a little bit about what happens if the Farm Bill expires, if folks are curious, but that's worth noting. So for this upcoming Farm Bill, there are some potentially complicating factors. We've got hold on, let's get the veggies. All right, they're looking pretty good. So I'm gonna give it another minute though. So potentially complicating factors for the Farm Bill this year. include 2022 midterms, how that plays out definitely could have a significant impact on the Farm Bill. And then big picture trade and economic situations are always at play in terms of the Farm Bill. One of the big factors in negotiating the last Farm Bill was the fact that there was basically dairy was a big consideration, and dairy farms in the U.S. were struggling considerably, and a lot of that had to do with things beyond U.S. Activity. It had a lot to do with the global trade in milk solids, right, which is a little bit wild to be thinking about, but it absolutely plays a role. And then the state of party politics in 2023 will definitely influence how the Farm Bill gets done and whether it gets done on time. And that doesn't necessarily mean inter-party politics. It can also be intra-party politics. In the last Farm Bill, the Republican members of the House introduced their own bill at one point. They introduced a partisan, basically a bill that was entirely Republican-led, and then it was voted down on the floor of the House, and that was largely due, they weren't able to get enough Republican votes, in part because within the Republican Party there was a disagreement about how to deal with immigration. So it definitely is a number of things at play. I'm also going to jump in here in just a second. Ooh, sloppy caribou, Brad. That sounds pretty good. So I was just checking the chat to see if folks have got any questions to start with. So before we get into some of FMC's priorities, I also want to just provide you with a little bit of my own perspective on the Farm Bill and the importance of getting ready now. All right, so just noticing the veggies look pretty good, so I'm gonna put them in a bowl so that I get this beef in the pan. So while I'm doing that, I will mention that one of the things about the political process in our country is that it's really it can be a challenging and varied process by which bills get passed. That like how a bill becomes a law thing that we learned in school, it's like pretty often more complicated than that. And it's not necessarily, I shouldn't say not necessarily, it's not at all designed for irregular individuals to understand what's going on and really be able to engage. And so what has happened is that it is the domain of experts and those who have had historic access to the process and who have resources are the most likely to be able to have their interests carried out in Congress. And the antidote to that is people participating in the process. And I say this because I really want to emphasize for you all that there is an important opportunity to participate in the process. So now I'm over here browning my ground beef, just breaking it up a little bit in the pan so we can get a nice brown to it. Feel free to follow along. And so just returning to the idea of engaging in this process, I really want to encourage you all to think about ways that you can engage your market community, whether that's your farmers, your customers, and really getting ahead of this and making sure that farmers markets are well positioned in this upcoming Farm Bill. One suggestion of how you might do that is having either like postcards at the market that can be sent to your members of Congress, petition tables, or email lists, and really trying to think ahead in this process, because I do think there's a real opportunity for farmers markets to influence the outcome of the Farm Bill, but only if we're working together on it. So let's go ahead and talk about Farmers Market Coalition priorities for this upcoming Farm Bill, and I'm presenting them in pretty broad brush right now. We'll get into, as we get closer, we'll have some more specific policy, actual policy proposals. So for the Farmers Market Coalition, our general overall priority is really to help make sure that farmers markets and the full diversity of farmers markets are looked after in the Farm Bill. A lot of what has been a problem in the Farm Bill for farmers markets has made it challenging for small and under-resourced organizations to access the funds that are available. So our focus on the local agricultural marketing program will be twofold. Simplifying the creating a simplified application process for lower dollar amount grants to help make sure that other entities who have not traditionally had access to them will, and then funding for training and technical support work. So the work of, say, the Alaska Farmers Market Association or the Farmers Market Coalition, organizations, in many cases, it may be extension services, but regardless, helping to provide that additional support to build the capacity, really, the capacity within our sector to be successful. And there's a model for this already in the Gus Schumacher Nutrition Incentive Program. So that serves as a potentially good example for that we can use for that. And then the other thing is on the Gus Schumacher Nutrition Incentive Program. There have been a number of challenges on that side lately that have really run the risk of watering down the commitment of that program to local and direct agriculture. And then there's been some programmatic challenges that folks may have been aware of. Farmers Market Coalition led a letter to advise USDA on some of those pieces. So I think that's probably all I want to say about Farmers Market Coalition's priorities. My ground beef is looking pretty good. So this is kind of the point where you kind of throw everything else in the pan, and then I can give you my full attention while this simmers. So the veggie version, I've got my tofu here. So I'm just going to turn that on as well. A little oil in the pan, toss that in, and then we can start to talk about some of the specifics here. So this is a great time to start putting any questions you have about the Farm Bill or concerns, any thoughts you have. We'll dive into it in just a second. I'm also curious what else folks are making. You all are making dinner. So we've got our veggies cooked up, ready to go in. We've got our tomatoes, and I went ahead and added the garlic there into my tomatoes already. Different spoons, so the veggie folks don't have to get meaty. There. I went ahead and put my barbecue sauce and my ketchup all here, so it's all ready to go, all mixed up. And the other thing about this dish is, if it isn't obvious, make it however you want. It's super versatile. There's kind of no wrong way to do it. Now that everything is mixed up and all set to go, I can go ahead and put the lid on, and then I'll move the computer and we can talk Farm Bill stuff. Whoop. We got someone waiting on their Chinese food. Pretty good. Oh, I forgot. Secret ingredient, if you're doing it, beer. If not, some other little liquid. I will admit I did start in on the beer a little bit. It's after 5, right? I guess it is here. It's not there. But it's 5 o'clock here. All right. So I'm gonna move my computer here, and we can sit down at the table. So I think, it may be good to go ahead and do this. Folks can unmute themselves. I'm not seeing questions in the chat. So this can just be a very casual Farm Bill conversation at this point.
Hey, Ben, this is Robbie, and I know this doesn't affect the 2023 Farm Bill, but as Jeffrey was explaining earlier about the changes and additional funding in the AMS grants, I wonder if you could talk just real briefly about that. I'm hoping folks will take a look at these and think about applying for larger projects for their communities.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we provided some of that same type of feedback about, that we're identifying for the Farm Bill. Excuse me. Some of the same feedback that we're providing to AMS with regard to these grants is the same of this type of stuff here. I don't know that we can expect to see some of these simplified grant applications, but it's worth noting that there is going to be more funding and a lower match requirement. I suspect I missed Jeff's presentation, but I suspect he talked about that. So this is a really exciting opportunity for markets and communities to think about how to access those funds and go in for them. The challenge, of course, is that the grants they're a beast. Like, they're not necessarily easy to get in. So it's very much worth thinking about who in your community might be the right entity to oversee those grants, and how to try and come together as a group and look at those funds. Robbie, does that help? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yes, thanks, Ben. And I want to know what kind of beer you're drinking. Side note.
This is a beer brewed by my friend. It's a black lager, which is one of my favorite types of beer. It goes really well in sloppy joes.
Hey, Ben, who are the Farmers Market Coalition's allies in getting bigger groups together to advocate on behalf of small farmers and direct-to-market farmers? Who do you work with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do most of our policy advocacy through the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition. They are, it's a rather large, rather diverse coalition of groups focused on sustainable agriculture and food access. And they're based in DC, so we work very closely with them, particularly on the Farm Bill. And then we also work very closely with the various state associations.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Ben. I have a kind of a speculative question. I was wondering if, like, in the past, I've seen this happen politically. Right now, we're going to be getting a bunch of funding from COVID bills that are focused on farmers and things like that, and amplifying the supply chain. So will that have a backlash effect when it comes time for the Farm Bill to be put together, and they'll say, oh, we took care of that already. That infrastructure's there. Is there any risk of that?
That's a great question. My sense is that not really something that we need to be too concerned about. Sorry, I'm trying to find a good spot there. Stir and talk to you all. My sense is that that's probably not going to be so much of an issue. It seems as though so some of the big picture pieces that are going on is that so with the Democrats in control of both the House and the Senate, it means that the chairs of both of those committees are led by Democrats, and the Senate majority leader, or the chair of the Agricultural Committee is Debbie Stabenow, and she has shown a long-standing commitment to this work. And then, the other thing is that it seems as though the new administration is very, very committed to continuing to support the work of the local and regional food system, and that they're looking, maybe even looking to think about how some of the local and regional food systems can support climate goals and other goals. So actually, I think we may be, and we're kind of already seeing this a little bit with some of the COVID stuff, we may actually be swamped with more funding than we've ever seen, and kind of frankly, that more than we know what to do with. I'm also going to interrupt myself for just 1 second to point out I forgot to put salt and pepper in it, which would be a huge mistake. So yeah, does that help answer your question?
Absolutely. It's exactly not what I knew you'd say, but I really hoping you'd say. So that's great to hear.
And of course, you know, that is all subject to change as well, right? We just, you know, it's always hard, and a lot of it has to do with how we as a community, you know, come together and are able to advocate for our needs. And so being able to bring in, that's why I kind of emphasize that to begin with, the extent to which we can emphasize and bring our communities together to push for what it is that's important to us will be a lot more successful.
So shovel-ready projects, get them ready. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, think about what it is. Definitely, that I'd say that's definitely the case, because we, you know, so the way they, for example, to Robbie's point earlier, the way that they've set up this funding is basically they're taking pretty much all of the COVID funding and putting it into this next round of farmers market and local food promotion program grants, and then that means that they're going to have extra money the following year. So the next couple of years of the farmers market and local food promotion program are already going to be higher, and then, you know, come 2023, we could see those projects, those programs increase even further. So I did say both shovel-ready projects and also start thinking about, you know, that planning for what needs to change in the Farm Bill in order to, you know, help make sure those resources go even further.
I have a question. In past years, the Farm Bill has been pretty tilted toward industrial agriculture. And I was wondering, are you seeing any kind of a shift to do more for the small local farmer or organic or any of those?
That's a great question. And I think you really kind of emphasized there is, like, on the one hand, there's like exciting opportunities for the work that we all do within the, you know, like potentially within the next Farm Bill. And also, if we're being really honest, you know, some of my comments about the way our political system work lead me to believe that we're not going to see a fundamental shift in how the Farm Bill works, and the majority of that funding in that Farm Bill are going to go to those same entities who have received the bulk of that funding in the past. But yeah, I think it would take something pretty significant for there to be a wholesale shift in how the Farm Bill it comes together.
Yeah, I was just hoping there might be more on soil science and stuff like that that can help extend growing seasons and also get out of some of the monoculture.
Yeah, and there are members of Congress who have really tried to suggest a complete reorientation in how the Farm Bill operates. You know, and you know, certainly, you know, we'd like to see that. I think it's, you know, unless there were significant changes within our political system writ large, I struggle to see how that would happen. That, you know, that said, I'm optimistic that there are opportunities, but they're more like around the edges.
Cheers, Ben. I have a question. You mentioned if the Farm Bill expires. And so I was curious, has that happened before? And what does that look like if it does happen? Is it a continuing resolution situation? Is it some projects get funded, some don't? Has that happened in the near past?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there have only been 2 times in the history of the Farm Bill where a new one didn't get done on time and the old previous one expired. That said, that has been the last 2 times the Farm Bill has been negotiated. So we are in a political climate where it is not just possible, maybe even likely, that the existing Farm Bill will expire before a new Farm Bill is negotiated. And the way that happens, so when that happens officially, everything reverts to the original authorizing legislation, which was passed in the 30s and 40s. So nobody wants that. So what they do is they pass a bill that basically extends the Farm Bill in its, basically the last version of it. But when I alluded to baseline funding, that is one of the significant pieces of it, is programs that don't have baseline funding don't get extended if they just do a straight extension. So that's why it's so important that our programs got that. Some of you may remember back in, I think it was 2014, there were no farmers market promotion program grants because the Farm Bill expired and there wasn't a new one in time. And so it's because the farmers market promotion program didn't have that baseline funding, there were no grants until the next year when they negotiated them. So that the good news for at least farmers market and local food promotion program now is that if that were to happen, those programs would continue. So that's a pretty significant change for us. But it's not to say there wouldn't be other significant impacts. Does that answer your question, Amy?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. I'm seeing maybe there's some questions in the chat. I'm having a little trouble tracking the chat fully while I'm cooking. So if there are questions in the chat, feel free to read them out loud. I'm happy to try and answer them. I think there's a question here about shovel-ready projects.
Yeah, I can read it for you.
Thank you.
Shovel-ready project could include a budget for a project that would get a commercial kitchen built, or a community garden, or an outreach program with employees costs included, or ...
That was me. Just basically pointing out that there's lots of things that we could have. Evelyn was asking about what that means to be shovel ready, and terminology wise, it's just getting something out there, having your mind wrapped around a project in a sufficient way so that if some funding fell down, you'd be able to catch it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then some of, I think I saw something related to that about, greenhouse projects or, things like that. And those are probably more down the road, right? But the shovel ready being, what could you do now? What are you prepared and ready to do? We got other questions? Happy to delve into any of these topics more in greater detail. I also don't remember exactly how much time we have for this one, so if we're getting towards the end.
Yeah, Ben, we got about 10 minutes left, and
okay.
Yeah, great. We definitely want to see you put your sloppy Joe together and eat it, though.
Oh, that might be, we might not quite get to that. I haven't made the salad yet, and but yeah, we'll see. I think that's the thing about this dish is it is easy. It does its best if you give it some time, right? In fact, the way you can tell that it's done is when the sort of red color moves from like that bright red to sort of like a reddish brown, and you got that good caramelization. I think in my divided attention, I put a little more liquid than I wanted in here. Ideally, you're like braising it and I'm like borderline boiling it. It'll be fine, but that's the nice thing about braising is you get that good browning. So, but I will say the key that I found with the buns is you got to make sure they're nicely toasted. Otherwise, they just turn to mush when you put all the sloppy stuff into it. We have a debate in our house, what's the sloppy and what's the Joe?
I don't think it can be done until you sing the Adam Sandler Sloppy Joe song, Ben.
I concur.
I don't know that I can sing it, and if I could, I don't know that you'd want to hear it, but you know, we certainly could play it in the background while we finish out this this portion of the discussion, right? Robbie did threaten to play that in the background the whole time.
Oh, that's why we all get along so well.
You want to see how the sloppy joe's looking here? I think I can see if I can turn my camera without dropping it in. It's starting to look pretty good. Veggie version looks like it might need a little more barbecue sauce. It's not quite the right texture, but getting there.
That's good.
Oh, look at Brad. Yeah.
What do you say, Brad? Do you toast the buns or you like them soft and soggy?
Well, they can start toasted.
Okay.
That's pretty much it, right? They're kind of a little soggy no matter what by the end.
I think that's part of the point.
So it seems like we're mostly exhausting questions on Farm Bill stuff. So I just, you know, in sort of closing out, I really emphasize the fact that there is, you know, farmers markets within Congress are well liked and well positioned, I would say. There are a number of members of Congress who would like to support the work that we're doing. We are well positioned in that there are farmers markets or farmers who sell at them in nearly every legislative district across the country. And so we have an opportunity to really, as one of our former board members, Gus Schumacher, who the Gus Schumacher Nutrition Incentive Program is named after, he was a boxer. He would say, you know, we have the opportunity to punch above our weight. And I think that's absolutely true. There is an opportunity for farmers markets really to influence the Farm Bill on topics that we care about, one of those directly related to us and that go beyond farmers markets exclusively. But what it will take is it will take us all coming together in order to do that. So for the Farmers Market Coalition, our goal is really to try and make sure that we are serving as that conduit and communicating with our members and our state partners so that you all know, what's going on and where the opportunities are. And I would really, really encourage you all to think about what you can do to help mobilize your community. So that means, so not the extent to which we've got in the last few years, the last couple Farm Bill rounds has been working with market operators. But if we can really get to the farmers and to the customers who are participating in farmers markets, there's a real exciting opportunity, and the timing is, it's coming up soon. So I want to encourage you all to start, talking to your customers, your farmers, your friends, your community about engaging on the Farm Bill, because it's a big piece of legislation. And to the question that was asked about shifting the Farm Bill towards a Farm Bill that's more in line with what I think those of us in this conversation would like to see. The antidote to moneyed interests in politics is grassroots engagement, people across the country speaking up and speaking loudly and speaking with a unified voice. So I think there's that opportunity, and we're really hopeful that that is something that we can do, but it will take all of us working on it. With that, I'll ask if there are any other questions, and then leave you all to your dinner, I guess.
Well, thank you, Ben. As always, this has been super awesome. And thank you to everybody who stuck with us through this long day with only about a 10-minute break total. I have sent out, or you'll get an email shortly asking you to fill out your event evaluation, but also just one more plug for that market survey, so we can get your listings in our toolkit started. So thank you very, very much. I'm gonna play a little song to get us out.